Right now, construction controversy. Bulldozers and crews move into the Big Bend National Park for border security efforts. Lawmakers from both parties tell me why they're critical of the Trump administration's decision. Data center debate. Governor Abbott orders developers to comply with new rules to build data centers. Republican Congressman Pat Fallon praises the policies, while Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor Vicki Goodwin tells us the legislature needs to act now and make the policy state law. I'm Jack Fink. Get your fix for Texas politics. Eye on Politics on CBS News Texas starts now. And good morning. Welcome to Eye on Politics. Hope you're having a nice weekend. We're going to start with the controversy that has erupted over the construction in the Big Bend National Park. Videos shot by Natalie Newman this month show contractors using bulldozers to clear trees and other brush. The crews are working for U.S. Customs and Border Protection, or CBP, which says this video shows them doing survey and design work. The head of the agency, Commissioner Rodney Scott, said in a statement that they are working to preserve the landscape and protect the access visitors and local businesses depend on. Scott said, quote, "Big Bend belongs to the American people and our job is to keep it safe. So let's be clear about what is and is not happening there. CBP is building one new access road, improving existing roads, installing detection technology, and placing vehicle barriers in limited strategic locations. We are not building a 30-foot wall or stadium lighting through Big Bend National Park, Big Bend Ranch State Park, or the Black Gap Wildlife Management Area." Even so, people gathered at the national park to protest the Trump administration's actions. Last week, Senator John Cornyn sent a letter to the Department of Homeland Security Secretary and asked him to meet with Texas stakeholders before any additional construction take place inside the Big Bend National Park and Big Bend Ranch State Park. CBS News Texas spoke with residents in the area who are upset about what's happening.
The roadways that they want to put in require almost as much destruction as would be necessary to put in a vertical wall.
I'm glad Cornyn is being what a true Texan should do, especially one who's elected to his office. Stand up for the rights of the landowners in the state and stand up for the parks that are America's playground, our playground.
We spoke one-on-one with Democratic Congresswoman Veronica Escobar of El Paso, who blasted the construction work being done.
It is such a tragedy, honestly, to see such a beautiful national treasure being bulldozed, literally bulldozed. And what is happening is the Trump administration believes it can do absolutely anything that it wants to in the name of border security. And that is not the case. That is not what Congress intended. And it shows an extreme disrespect for the communities impacted.
Now, since you've seen the construction, have you had a chance to reach out to U.S. Customs and Border Protection or DHS?
I did some extensive work in advance of the bulldozing, trying to prevent it, trying to reason with the folks in charge, also bringing an amendment forward during our appropriations process to essentially limit the ability of DHS to do this in Big Bend, but also an impact here in my region on Mount Cristo Rey, a sacred site owned by the Catholic Diocese. But I could not get any Republicans to support my amendment. I could not get any Republicans to help avert this disaster. And so this is something that is happening with the full blessing and support of the Republicans who are in charge in Congress. I will tell you, there are other Republicans in Texas who can stop this. Governor Greg Abbott has long challenged the federal government when it comes to Texas sovereignty. Ken Paxton, the Attorney General, who is now running for U.S. Senate, he has the power right now to stop it, to sue the federal government.
I mean, here's what CBP told me. They said the agency is not constructing a 30-foot wall. It's constructing 200 miles of patrol roads along with detection technology and 17 miles of non-contiguous areas of vehicle barriers. What's your reaction to that?
Big Bend is a natural barrier. There is absolutely no need for any of this. In fact, CBP has pretty sophisticated technology available that would not require this kind of destruction. I really do wish the administration would collaborate with local governments, with local communities. Every community along the US-Mexico border wants border security. But we also, at the same time, know there are different ways to secure the border, and bulldozing through national treasures is not necessary, and it's incredibly harmful and permanent.
Republican State Representative Wes Verdell of Brady in Central Texas also criticized the construction. His district comes within 28 miles of the southern border. He joined 2 other Republican state lawmakers and 40 Democratic state lawmakers urging Governor Abbott to ask the federal government to end demolition and construction inside the Big Bend National Park. Verdell says it's unnecessary.
You can take the technology that we have right now, like the blimps and the thermal and everything else, and watch that border, because our border crossings are very low in that area. Now you get to Eagle Pass, Laredo, Del Rio, El Paso, you have high traffic of people trying to cross the border. You get to Big Bend, where super rugged terrain, and it really kind of works as a natural barrier. You don't have that issue. So I think it's really a bad idea to destroy such a wonderful natural habitat. It's also going to kill tourism down there. Tourism is huge, and people that depend on the river for that tourism are going to be affected by it. I've gone down to the border. I have gone to Terlingua and to Presidio and Big Bend, and everyone I could find and talk to, they were all upset that this was happening. And I have yet to meet somebody that thinks that it's a good idea to go in there and destroy Big Bend like that. So I hope my other colleagues will step up.
And you're talking about Republicans who are telling you this.
I'm talking about Republicans, and unfortunately, very few of us Republicans have really taken a public position on this. And I've tried to get my colleagues to be public about it. And maybe it's just, they're from a different part of the district.
Why do you think other Republican lawmakers are not talking about this?
Yeah, that's a great question. I've been warned that if I take this position, I'm going to be accused of being an open border politician, which is not true at all. I've actually hauled the border wall to Arizona before. I believe in the border where it's necessary. And I don't see the blowback that people are fearing is going to happen. And I think we have a moral duty, Republican or Democrat, to stand up and do what's right, regardless of politics.
Now, I reached out to the Department of Homeland Security and to Customs and Border Protection, and they sent me a statement by the CBP Commissioner, Rodney Scott. And this is what he had to say. Quote, "Big Bend belongs to the American people, and our job is to keep it safe." He then went on to say that they are not building a 30-foot high wall. They are building one new access road. They're improving existing roads. They're installing detection technology, and they're placing vehicle barriers in limited strategic locations. So when you hear that, what do you think?
Yeah, I hope that's true. I know the original plan was for the border wall, and we've heard that they have shifted away from that.
What do you make of the road?
If the road is necessary, I understand if they're trying to be cautious about it and pragmatic about it, but I'm always going to lean on the side of protecting Big Bend's natural landscape. And so I hope that they are being good stewards when they're doing that, and I hope they don't prove me wrong.
Republican Congressman Pat Fallon told me he supports the Trump administration's efforts.
Border security is a national security issue, and I'm with the president at lockstep on this, as far as because he's been wildly successful with the border.
Governor Abbott's press secretary issued a statement about the situation, saying, quote, "Rugged, isolated areas like Big Bend are great opportunities to deploy technology to aid in securing the border." Welcome back to Eye on Politics. Backlash from the public, specifically rural Texans, pushed Governor Greg Abbott to implement what his administration called a pause on the building of data centers. Earlier this month, he directed the Public Utility Commission of Texas and ERCOT to conduct a comprehensive audit on all data center projects to determine how they are being paid for, how they are providing water and electricity for their projects, and what they are doing to reduce noise and light impacts on nearby property owners. The governor said if data centers don't comply and they fail this audit, their projects will not go forward. The Data Center Coalition sent Governor Abbott a letter saying its organization and all member companies listed on this screen support his initiatives. A poll by Signal shows 82% of Texans support the governor's policy, and another poll by Texas Public Opinion Research shows more than 75% of Texans support requiring large AI data centers to disclose water consumption and avoid overused aquifers, and fund conservation projects, and also fund their own grid upgrades and not pass the costs on to ratepayers. We went one-on-one with Democratic candidate for Lieutenant Governor Vicki Goodwin of Austin, who told me the governor should call a special legislative session so lawmakers can codify the governor's policy into state law.
We've seen more people come out on this issue than any other in recent days, months, et cetera. And it's because they're concerned about their utility costs going up. They're concerned about the amount of water and electricity that these data centers are using. There's a whole lot of other concerns, but for me, I think it gets back to people worrying about the costs that are going to be pushed back onto them in their households, and the fact that we have given huge subsidies or tax incentives to these companies that really are going to come to Texas regardless of whether they get those tax abatements. We've given sales tax abatements and property tax abatements to these data centers.
So you want to eliminate that, and I know a lot of lawmakers want to eliminate that sales tax incentive.
These companies should stand on their own at this point in time. We see an explosive growth of the data centers, and there's some thought that really the build out is we're overbuilding. And so the concern about if some of them are built and aren't used 10 years down the road, is this going to become kind of like our orphan well situation where the companies leave or potentially go bankrupt and we're left, the citizens of the state, to clean up the mess? There's also just a huge, vast amounts of water and energy, and there's real concern about how ERCOT will be able to handle this. Our grid has a capacity, and the amount of energy needed for these new data centers far exceeds the capacity that we currently have. Of course, some of the data centers are bringing in their own energy, building gas-powered plants on site or using generators, but we don't have a handle on how much emissions they are producing. And is that being regulated by the Railroad Commission, or is anyone paying attention to that?
Governor Abbott has implemented what his administration describes as a pause on data centers, requiring them to pass a comprehensive audit by the PUC, Public Utilities Commission of Texas, and ERCOT, where they would have to prove that they are paying their own way. They're bringing in and reusing their own water. They're bringing in their own electricity. And they are reducing the impacts of noise and light pollution, nuisances, I guess, if you will, and that they don't cause rate hikes among ratepayers in that area. What's your thought about that?
I mean, I think that's a good step, but I would like to have that put into law. Right now, it's just the governor asking for those things to happen. And what's the enforcement? We need to have the legislature back that up by, again, having a special session, putting this into law, making sure there's some way to enforce what the governor is asking for.
And let me just ask you about the poll. You had one poll that showed you leading Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, 48 to 46%. What was your reaction to that?
Well, obviously, I was really excited to see that poll. I wasn't aware of it until it came out, and that's great news. I think that voters are ready for some change when they know what my policy priorities are. They like what they have to hear. they like what they're hearing. Dan Patrick really has been very quiet on many of these issues. People are upset. They're upset about their schools being underfunded. They're upset about the THC ban that Dan Patrick was about. They're upset about his forcing his one version of his religion on the rest of us. So there's really a lot of voters who are unhappy with Dan Patrick, and thankfully they are starting to learn about Vicki Goodwin.
Republican North Texas Congressman Pat Fallon praised the governor's new policy and said the state needs to listen to residents' concerns.
I share the concerns that a lot of our constituents have. You have to do data centers like anything else smartly. If you don't get local buy-in, then I'm always going to, I'm going to be predisposed to being with the constituents and residents. If you do a data center where the local population has bought in, the local government has bought in, and the local leaders, then I don't think you really have much of an issue. But when there are concerns, and rightfully so, about noise, about property devaluation, they also want to make sure that you're not taking precious water resources, and you don't want to see your electric bill being increased because there's a giant data center maybe a mile down the street. So if it's done smartly where the locals buy in, and you could even see a situation where the data centers that are done right that we don't hear about that aren't controversial are the ones that usually go behind the meter, have their own direct energy source, usually with natural gas line that goes right to the data centers to power them, and then recycling their own water, or having very limited water needs. And then even you could see a situation where if they have their own behind the meter energy source, it could actually sell or transfer some of the energy back to the grid, which could decrease property or electric bills. So that's a good thing.
And what do you make of Governor Abbott, him basically putting a pause in place and requiring all the data center developers to, pass a comprehensive audit conducted by the Public Utility Commission of Texas and ERCOT? What do you make of that?
I think it was a thoughtful, good step that the governor put in place. And he was listening to his constituents, over 30 million of them, and they share those concerns, as I do. The fact of the matter is, with AI and quantum and us competing with China, this is something that we're going to have to deal with in the future. And I think in New York State did a complete moratorium where they said there's just not going to be data centers in New York. Well, what if some of those local communities actually wanted them because it was going to create jobs and opportunity and maybe even decrease their electric bills? Again, if done correctly. So I think that was not the smart way to do it, because that's exactly what China wants. They don't want to see data centers in the United States. But I like what the governor did, because you have to do it the right way. You have to get that local buy-in, and if you don't, then you go somewhere else.
And do you think Republicans could be held politically liable for, this backlash in November?
I don't think so, because we are listening to our constituents, and we're saying we agree that you should do these. These are a necessity, but you have to do it the right way.
President Trump described the governor's new policy on data centers as a mistake in an interview earlier this month with Punchbowl News. The president said data centers could be bigger than oil. Republicans say their first ever midterm convention being held at the American Airlines Center in Dallas next month will be their largest convention since 2016. As we reported exclusively on Friday, the Republican National Committee says the convention has a capacity of 20,000 attendees, including the media. We spoke with spokesman Zach Kraft about this.
This event will be larger than the Republican convention in Milwaukee in 2024. The excitement we are seeing on the ground from grassroots Republicans in Texas and across this country is real, and because of that, we anticipate this will be the largest midterm convention since 2016.
The RNC has also opened a lottery giving Republicans from across the country to attend and in some cases receive VIP treatment. Dallas County Democratic Party Chairman Cardall Coleman told me the party will hold fundraisers, demonstrations, and rallies of their own during the RNC convention. ICE wants to buy its agents gloves that could deliver an electrical shock. Sarah Jenkins has this week's brief.
The Department of Homeland Security says ICE plans to spend between $10 and $20 million on what it calls conductive distraction and de-escalation devices. They look like standard tactical gloves, but these can deliver a pain stimulus when activated and applied directly to the skin. The manufacturer says officers must complete training and be recertified every 2 years. It also warns that the device should not be used as punishment or on children, pregnant women, or other high-risk groups. Civil rights advocates are raising concerns about potential misuse, particularly as ICE faces scrutiny over its use of force. The League of United Latin American Citizens has demanded an immediate pause on shock gloves, full-body restraints, and any new use of force equipment for immigration enforcement. DHS says it's reviewing the technology to make sure its use complies with law enforcement policies and applicable law. For The Brief, I'm Sarah Jenkins.
All right, thank you, Sarah. Friendly reminder, you can watch all our full interviews from today's show. Just go to the CBS Texas YouTube page, and while you're there, go to the playlist for Eye on Politics, and also hit the subscribe button. And that's all for Eye on Politics this week. I'm Jack Fink. I am listening, and we are listening to you at CBS News Texas. Thank you so much for watching, and from all of us here, have a great Sunday. I'll see you next week.